Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a man escapes the chaos of city life to build his dream sauna in the mountains, he finds peace until a power-hungry HOA president wages war to steal his land. What begins as neighborly tension spirals into trespass, fraud, and a courtroom battle for justice. I had no intention of starting a war with anyone when I bought that slice of paradise out in the Cascades. All I wanted was peace, wood smoke, and some solitude, the kind you only get when the nearest Starbucks is over 20 miles away and your cell signal dies if you step into the wrong part of the yard. After 2 decades of chewing drywall in the corporate construction world, I finally had enough, so I cashed out, signed the papers, and drove my old truck up the mountain toward my new beginning. The place wasn't big, but it had bones. A 2-bedroom log-style home tucked into a 10-acre lot. Pine trees all around, and the gentle hiss of the river maybe 100 yards from the property line. It backed right up to a large wooded area, and while one side of the land touched a development, Silver Birch Hills, the kind of place with uniform fences and neighbors who snitch on you for mismatched mulch, my lot was legally separate. Not part of the HOA, not subject to their rules, not interested. I triple-checked that before I even made the offer. The first 2 months were a dream. I spent the mornings splitting firewood, evenings sketching out my project plans, and the centerpiece, a real honest-to-God Russian banya. Cedar-lined, wood-fired, no electricity, no plastic. I'd been obsessed with the idea ever since visiting a friend's family in Alaska. There's something ancient and cleansing about it. Steam rising off your skin, cold plunge in the snow, maybe a shot of vodka after if you're feeling spiritual. I was going to build it myself, by the book. Permit in hand. No shortcuts. I filed everything through the Snohomish County Building Department. Permit granted. Surveyors came out to mark the offsets. I was within every legal boundary, over 30 feet from any fence, hidden by trees, not visible from the street. My contractor was an old buddy from Oregon who specialized in traditional methods. We used milled cedar from a local yard, hand-laid stone for the base, even custom-welded the hinges for the door. It was perfect. Almost too perfect. The neighbors were mostly indifferent, though I got a few side glances from the ones walking their dogs past my drive. You could see the roof line if you squinted from the corner of the trail that ran behind my property, and I heard whispers about some kind of shed going up behind the pines. And then there was her. I met Karen B. the 3rd week after I moved in. She came striding down my drive like she owned the goddamn mountain, blonde bob perfectly set. Beige trench coat that probably cost more than my chainsaw, clutching a leather folder and a look of practiced tolerance. Introduced herself as Karen Bartholomew, president of the Silver Birch Hills Homeowners Association. She extended her hand like it was some holy object I was meant to kiss. I just wanted to welcome you, she said, eyes already scanning the surroundings, and remind you that we take neighborhood aesthetic compliance very seriously here. I blinked. That's fine, I replied. But I'm not part of the HOA. Her smile stiffened barely. Well, technically, your lot borders the community. We consider that part of our visual zone. Yeah, well, I consider daylight to be optional before coffee. But I don't enforce it on anyone. I didn't mean to be rude, but she set off something in me. That tone, that posture, like she was doing me a favor by allowing me to exist near her little suburban utopia. She gave me a pamphlet anyway. Just in case. You may want to review our exterior structure guidelines. I tossed it on the woodpile after she left. Construction on the banya wrapped up just before the first snowfall. A fresh blanket of white settled on the roof like frosting, the smell of cedar still thick in the air. I lit the stove that night just to test it, low and slow, letting the warmth push into the stone and wood. It was perfect. I sat on the porch with a beer, watching the steam curl out of the chimney, half expecting to hear bears clapping in the woods. I didn't notice the footprints in the snow until morning. They weren't mine. Narrow, deliberate steps, boots but smaller than my own, leading from the forest edge near the HOA fence, across the side of the yard and right up to the banya's door. Then back again. I checked the side gate, still locked, then looked up and saw it. The top rail of the fence was scuffed, snow knocked loose. One of the boards had a faint black streak, like from a boot. Someone had climbed over. I didn't sleep much that night. I installed a motion light on the back wall, set up my old GoPro on the porch just in case. Maybe it was just a curious kid. Maybe someone got lost. Maybe it was nothing. But deep down, I already had a feeling who it was. And I knew. The real fire hadn't even started yet. I didn't expect the screaming to start before sunrise. But of course, that's when people with nothing to fear from God choose to do their worst. It was the third morning after the banya was finished when I woke to the metallic clang of something being abused outside, followed by frantic barking. My dog, Moose, a big shepherd mix with more loyalty than sense, was at the window, losing his mind. I shoved my feet into boots and stumbled out the back door, breath cresting white in the freezing air. And there she was, Karen freaking Bartholomew, halfway over my side fence like a hostile raccoon in a designer parka, one leg already on my property and a black pry bar clenched in her gloved hand. Behind her came two men, older than me but built like gym membership salesmen who practice intimidation as a sport. Their jackets bore the HOA logo, which I'd thought was just a bad graphic design until that moment when it became something worse, a badge. "Excuse me," I shouted, though I was sure my neighbors 3 counties away could hear the sarcasm. Karen dropped down on my side of the fence and immediately marched past me toward the banya, as if she were personally sent by the Department of Homeland Security to neutralize a spa. One of the men released a drone into the air. The thing buzzed up like a metal hornet, pointed straight at my cedar walls. "Eric, this is an emergency compliance inspection," Karen announced without turning around, already swinging that pry bar like she was auditioning for a demolition derby. "Your structure violates the visual harmony of our shared environment." "It's not your environment," I snapped, picking up my pace. "This property isn't part of Silver Birch Hills." She ignored me. She went straight to the door of the banya and slammed the pry bar into the frame, splintering fresh cedar. The sound made something inside me tighten. You don't hit another man's woodwork. That's practically an international law. Moose lunged forward, growling like he planned to chew through the HOA one limb at a time, but I grabbed his collar before he got us both put down. One of the goons tried to block my path, so I lifted my phone. "I am calling the sheriff," I told him calmly, "and you are all about 5 seconds from being on the wrong side of every trespassing law this state has." He shoved me. Not hard enough to knock me down, just enough to communicate that he enjoyed it. Bad move. Old habits die hard. I twisted his wrist the way a Marine buddy once taught me, and suddenly the guy was face first in the snow, arm pinned behind his back while he squealed like someone had just stepped on his life choices. "Assault," Karen shrieked, pointing at me with righteous fury. "You're assaulting an HOA officer." "There's no such thing," I said, tightening my hold just a little to drive in the point while dialing the sheriff's office with my free hand. "Enjoy explaining this when the real authorities show up." Karen's eyes darted upward as the drone swooped closer, recording everything. "We need visual evidence of the illegal structure before he destroys it." The remaining goon circled toward me, but then, thankfully, the far-off echo of a siren climbed into the air. Karen froze for half a heartbeat and then tried to kick down the banya door out of pure spite. When it didn't budge, she turned to me, face red beneath her perfectly powdered exterior. "This is not over," she hissed. "Your property has been incorrectly mapped for years. We're correcting a decades-old clerical error. This land belongs to Silver Birch Hills." "Then you won't mind showing the sheriff your paperwork," I said sweetly. And honestly, I've never seen a woman look so offended that someone suggested she follow the law. The sheriff's SUV barreled up my driveway, tires crunching over ice. Deputy Ramirez stepped out first, a broad-shouldered guy with a calm voice and a face that says, "Don't make me file extra paperwork today." Behind him, Sheriff Whitaker himself. They both looked at the scene, me holding a man in the snow, Karen wielding a pry bar beside a vandalized banya, the drone buzzing overhead like a budget spycraft. It took all of 3 seconds for Whitaker to decide who the problem was. He walked straight to Karen. "Ma'am, put the tool down and step away." "You don't understand," she blurted. "This is emergency intervention. That structure must be removed. It violates—" "This isn't an HOA property," he interrupted. "You and your people are trespassing." She opened her mouth again, but Whitaker held up a hand with the kind of authority only a man tired of HOA drama can wield. "Do not say another word unless you'd like to add resisting arrest to your day." Karen looked genuinely stunned, like she'd just discovered gravity applies to her too. One of the deputies confiscated the drone, its operator whining about evidence gathering. Another hauled the guy I'd pinned upright and slapped cuffs on him for good measure. Karen was given the chance to leave peacefully. Instead, she tried to argue with the sheriff about property jurisdiction, bylaws, community stewardship, and something about the sanctity of visual aesthetics. Whitaker sighed. "Ma'am, step over here." And just like that, cuffs. Sweeter than any sauna steam. They loaded her into the SUV. She pressed her face to the window, eyes burning holes into me. "We will take action," she promised through the glass. "Your illegal shed is going down." "It's a banya," I said. "Look it up." The car door slammed. Silence returned. Snowflakes drifted down as deputies took statements and marked the damage on their report. When they left, I stood alone in the cold beside my wounded cedar sanctuary. My hands shook, not from fear or rage, but adrenaline and disbelief. I had built something beautiful, something personal, and in less than 3 days, my neighbor had tried to beat it to death with a crowbar. I ran my hand over the freshly gouged wood and whispered the only reasonable thing a man could say in that moment. "What the hell have I gotten myself into?" The next morning started with the kind of stillness you only get after a storm. The snow outside sparkled like nothing had ever happened. No drone, no crowbar, no unhinged HOA president crawling over fences like a suburban raccoon with a god complex. I made coffee, poured it into my favorite battered mug, and stood on the porch in my thermals and boots, waiting for the world to exhale. Instead, the mail arrived. Not just a letter, a thick envelope certified. I signed for it because I wasn't about to give them any excuse to say I refused service. It was from something called Silver Birch Legal Compliance Committee, which sounded made up even before I saw the return address, the HOA clubhouse. These people had a clubhouse. Of course they did. Inside was a stapled packet of papers and a plastic-bound map, accompanied by a sternly worded letter that opened with "Notice of mandatory removal of unauthorized structure, non-compliant parcel adjustment pending." They really went for it. The language was dripping with passive aggression and thinly veiled threats. According to the letter, my recent unauthorized development, the banya, was now considered a visual obstruction in the Shared Aesthetic Visibility Corridor, a term that made me want to punch drywall. They claimed my property was subject to emergency compliance actions under HOA Article 12, subsection 6, and that I was to commence full demolition within 10 business days or face enforcement actions including fines totaling up to $65,000 and further legal remedy. I laughed out loud. Then I turned the page. There it was, a map, a full-color rendering marked with parcel lines. And somehow, magically, my property was now colored in the same shade as the Silver Birch Hills HOA. A handwritten note beneath it read, "Jurisdiction extended via Amendment 19B, April 15th, last year. Only problem, I bought this land in February of last year. Their so-called amendment was dated 2 months after I became the legal owner. That's not just shady, that's forged on the kitchen table level shady." I pulled up the original map I'd saved from the county's GIS portal. Sure enough, it showed my lot as a standalone outside the HOA boundaries. I double-checked my title records. No mention of covenants, no lien. Nothing about being under HOA jurisdiction. In fact, my realtor made a whole damn point of that during the closing process. But still, they were trying to rewrite the map like we were living in a board game. I called the county assessor's office, then the building department, then zoning. One bureaucratic loop-de-loop after another, until finally a woman named Darlene in land records offered to meet me in person. Said she'd seen some odd stuff come across her desk recently and that it might be worth a second look. I drove down the mountain in silence, the envelope sitting in the passenger seat like a ticking bomb. At the county building, Darlene met me with a stack of dusty manila folders and a red pen tucked behind one ear. Her office smelled like toner and dry rot. She laid out the original plats, the survey records, and my deed. "They're bluffing," she said, without even looking up. This kind of jurisdiction change would require approval from the county council, publication, and notice to all impacted landowners. And if they forged it, she narrowed her eyes. "Then it's criminal, not just civil. I'd like copies of what you received." I handed her everything. She pulled out the amended map, held it up to the window light, and laughed. "Oh, honey, this wasn't even printed on county stock. This is copy shop garbage." The letter itself had a signature that said, "Inspector Garrett Holmes, Office of Structural Code Enforcement." I asked if she knew him. She called a number from her Rolodex. Yes, she still used one. And a minute later, she frowned. Garrett retired 2 years ago, and he never worked in code enforcement. He was an electrical permits guy. Nice man. Not a fan of HOAs, so they faked a county official's signature. Brazen. Real mobster behavior, just with worse fashion sense. I left the office with a folder of real maps, certified property line data, and a PDF of the original jurisdictional boundaries. I also now had the direct line to a county investigator in case I wanted to open a complaint about potential document tampering. Spoiler, I did. Back home, I spread everything out on my kitchen table. I looked at the fake map next to the real one, stared at the absurdity of how easy it was for someone with Photoshop and a printer to try to bulldoze my life. And that's when I saw it. A name scribbled faintly in the bottom corner of the amended map. Hard to make out, but I leaned in. R. Ellsworth. I didn't know who that was. Yet. But it wasn't Karen's name, which meant I wasn't just dealing with one power-hungry suburban queen. This was bigger. A lot bigger. And I was going to have to dig deep, through records, through lies, and through whatever rotten foundation this HOA was standing on, before they tore down the only thing that finally made this place feel like home. You'd think after discovering someone tried to forge a map to hijack your land, you'd get at least a week of peace to process it. Maybe sit in your steam room, drink a cold beer, contemplate mortality like a normal adult. But no, this wasn't that kind of story. The day after meeting with Darlene, I got a knock on the door from a county inspector. A real one this time. Name was Harlan Davies. Older guy, gray beard, coffee stain on his windbreaker. Walked with a limp and the kind of no-bullshit demeanor that comes from dealing with 1,000 Karens before breakfast. He held up his badge and said, "We got a whistleblower tip about forged land maps tied to an HOA in your sector. Your name came up." "Yeah," I said, opening the door wider. "Come on in. You're about a week late." I spread out the mess on the dining table. Real plats, fake plats, jurisdictional overlays, zoning printouts, signatures, timestamps. Harlan leaned over them like he was reading a crime scene. "Damn," he muttered. "This is a hell of a mess. Tell me something I don't know." He tapped the bottom corner of the forged map. "That initial, R. Ellsworth. You figure out who that is?" "Not yet," I said. "But I'm guessing not a Scrabble champion. Try Robert Ellsworth. He was a clerical processor at the zoning office 3 years ago. Got fired. Rumor was he got too cozy with a couple of property developers, did a little too much expedited processing under the table." "Let me guess," I said. "He lived near here?" "Closer than that," Harlan said. "His sister is Karen Bartholomew." Of course she was. He asked if I wanted to file a formal affidavit, and I said hell yes. The sheriff already had my trespassing report on file. Now this would go straight to the county attorney's office. We weren't just in HOA turf war territory anymore. This was attempted land theft by way of forged jurisdiction, and I wasn't the only one. After Harlan left, I made some calls. First to Darlene again, who connected me to a neighborhood historian. Yeah, that's a thing here. A retired guy named Vince who spent his weekends scanning old plats into a digital archive for fun. I met Vince the next day at a local library, and within 20 minutes, he pulled up archived neighborhood plats showing at least 3 other parcels on the HOA border that had mysteriously migrated into HOA jurisdiction over the past few years. One of them belonged to a woman named Loretta Salinas. I looked her up, found her address, and knocked on her door with a copy of her original plat in hand. She was in her 70s. Sharp as a tack, and angry enough to flay a rhino when I showed her what had been done. "That witch," Loretta hissed. I told her I wasn't joining the HOA, and then 3 months later I got a letter saying my backyard pergola was non-compliant. I thought I was losing my mind. I asked if she still had the letter. She brought it out. Same header, same HOA stationery, and another copy of a fake map nearly identical to mine. It even used the same fake inspector signature, Garrett Holmes. Another neighbor, Doug Prescott, had a similar story. His father passed away last year, and while Doug was still settling the estate, he got hit with a $5,000 initiation assessment fee for new HOA members. The catch? His dad's house had never been part of the HOA. But the new amended map said otherwise. "You know," Doug said, sipping coffee from a mug that read, "I don't need Google, my wife knows everything." I thought about fighting it. But my dad's health was bad, and I didn't want to deal with the stress. Figured it was some technicality, so I paid it. "You paid it," I said, blinking. Yeah, I mean, I was grieving. They caught me at the right time, or the wrong one, depending how you look at it. I looked at it like extortion. So did my attorney. Yes, by that point, I had a lawyer. Her name was Ashlyn DeWitt, mid-30s, ex-federal clerk, sharp-tongued, and always 3 steps ahead. I handed her everything. The fake maps, Loretta's documents, Doug's payment receipts, Harlan's contact info. Eric, she said after reviewing it all, this isn't just HOA bullying. This is an organized scheme to expand jurisdiction, extort money, and seize de facto control of private property. If your county doesn't prosecute it, I will personally get the state attorney general involved. Good, I said. Because these people tried to crowbar my damn sauna. We laughed, but it was grim. This wasn't some petty suburban feud anymore. Over the next week, Ashlyn filed a formal demand letter to the Silver Birch Hills HOA requesting an immediate withdrawal of all jurisdictional claims over my property and a full audit of their recent membership adjustments. Unsurprisingly, the HOA didn't respond, but the silence was telling. Then Ashlyn got a call from someone inside, an anonymous HOA board member who'd been getting cold feet. They left a voicemail with a scrambled voice, straight up movie stuff, saying they had access to internal emails that proved Karen was running an off-books plan to slowly annex border properties into the HOA under the pretense of map updates. The goal: increase fee revenue, enforce property rules, make the neighborhood look uniform and investment-ready for developers. But there was more. The kicker: Karen's son, Brent Bartholomew, ran a private contracting firm called B&R Community Enhancements, LLC. Guess who got the majority of renovation and compliance correction jobs after HOA mandated demolitions? Guess who billed the HOA for $7,000 to tear down Loretta's pergola? Karen's own damn son. It was a machine, a self-sustaining HOA-powered racket. Identify a non-compliant house. Forge a map, claim jurisdiction, issue fines, demand demolitions, award contract to B&R, rinse and repeat. Except now, the rinse cycle was over, and I was ready to burn the whole machine down. Filing a lawsuit feels less like striking back and more like dropping a brick into a pit of wet bureaucracy. But when you've got forged documents, coerced neighbors, and a sauna with pry bar scars, there's not much choice. Ashlyn filed the civil suit on a Tuesday morning. $450,000 in damages. Grounds: unlawful trespass, vandalism, defamation, harassment, falsification of documents, and attempted annexation of private land through fraudulent representation. The clerk at the courthouse raised her eyebrows when she read the claim. That HOA's finally catching heat, huh? She muttered, stamping the case number. By Wednesday, the Silver Birch Hills HOA's legal response landed in Ashlyn's inbox, and with it, their counterclaim. Karen was alleging emotional distress, public defamation, and physical intimidation, naming me as a hostile individual with a known temper and military-style combat training. For the record, I'd only taken one Krav Maga class, and I left. Halfway through because the instructor kept talking about eye gouges like he was describing his fantasy honeymoon. I'll give it to Karen. She knew how to throw every piece of spaghetti at the wall to see what stuck. But the court wasn't buying it. The judge at the preliminary hearing, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s named Judge Lennox, cut through the noise fast. She threw out Karen's defamation claim with visible disgust and scheduled an expedited discovery hearing for our suit, citing substantial allegations of bad faith governance and procedural misconduct. Karen's attorney, some wax-face guy named Terrence DeWald, tried to object, but Lennox stared him down like he'd just interrupted her poker game. Unless your client has evidence that she owns the moon, she said dryly, you can sit down. God, I love this woman. Then came the media. It started with the video, my GoPro footage. Ashlyn had held off on releasing it, hoping to use it in court first. But after the countersuit, she decided it was time to go nuclear. We sent it to a local news outlet anonymously. Within 12 hours, it was everywhere. It opened with Karen climbing the fence like a graying gymnast with a mission from hell. Then her screeching about visual aesthetics, the drone buzzing, her smacking the side of my banya with that pry bar like she was trying to extract secrets from Cedar. The footage of me calmly holding down one of her flunkies didn't hurt either, especially when he started yelling about how this doesn't concern the sheriff. Twitter had a field day. So did Reddit. YouTube exploded. The video hit 500,000 views in 3 days. Titles ranged from HOA Karen tries to demolish man's bathhouse to local hero subdues HOA henchman with dad strength. Even local TV picked it up. One of those slow news weeks, I guess. They showed clips over and over, especially the part where Karen shouted, "We'll do to your house what we did to the other two." That line right there set everything on fire. Ashlyn got a call the next morning from a reporter at Channel 6 Investigates. He wanted to talk about the other two. What houses? What did she mean? We didn't have answers yet, but the heat was now on HOA leadership like a blowtorch. Karen's carefully curated world was crumbling in the public eye. The once pristine Silver Birch Hills Facebook group went into lockdown mode. Comments were disabled. Then the entire page vanished, but not before a few screenshots leaked. One showed Karen writing, "The county is taking too long. If we want a clean community, sometimes we have to take action ourselves." Another was from Brent, her son the contractor, bragging about how those fences came down fast and how the new lot will show well for the investors. Investors. That word again. Then the break. Ashlyn got an email from a throwaway address. No name, no subject line, just attachments, PDFs, image scans, emails. An HOA board member, anonymous, terrified, but clearly trying to sleep at night again, had leaked internal documents, meeting notes, payment logs, contractor assignments. It was all there. Karen had been orchestrating property improvement initiatives without member votes, reclassifying edge properties as provisional lots, then issuing non-compliance notices, all under the radar. Her son's company, B&R, had secured 90% of those jobs. Payment approvals were pushed through during executive sessions that weren't recorded. One entry stood out, Lot 42, owner deceased, no surviving spouse. Begin absorption process next fiscal quarter. That was Doug Prescott's dad's house, the one he inherited, the one he paid $5,000 to join the HOA after his father died. She was waiting for people to die to take their land. This wasn't mismanagement. It was a hostile real estate acquisition scheme masquerading as lawn inspections. Ashlyn began drafting subpoenas. I sat in my truck that night outside the courthouse, hands gripping the wheel like it might fly away. I had started this with a dream of steam and cedar. Now I was watching the belly of a beast unravel in front of me. A beast with a name, a face, and a goddamn marketing plan. The lawsuit was just the beginning. We weren't just going after the HOA anymore. We were going after everything they were built on. There's a moment when people like Karen realize the world isn't going to bend for them anymore. You can see it in their eyes. That flicker of panic behind the mascara and controlled smiles, the quiet calculation of how far they've pushed, how much they've covered up, and whether there's still time to vanish before the hammer drops. Karen hit that moment the day the county executed a search warrant on the HOA office. It came fast. Ashlyn worked with the prosecutor's office, handed them everything the anonymous board member had leaked, and then some. We traced financial flows, construction permits, drone flight logs, even pulled cell tower data to show Karen's phone on my property during the emergency intervention. Judge Lennox signed off the warrant with a sigh, saying, "About damn time." Sheriff Whitaker himself led the raid. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. But Vince, the neighborhood historian, watched it unfold from a bench near the community center. He texted me a photo. Karen in a mint green power coat standing outside the office, arms crossed, surrounded by deputies and flanked by her silent board members like fallen courtiers. They took boxes of documents, computers, external drives. One deputy carried out a file cabinet drawer wrapped in duct tape, the kind of panicked DIY security move that screams, "I'm hiding something." That evening, the prosecutor's office issued a press release. A formal investigation was underway into Silver Birch Hills HOA and its leadership, with charges under review for criminal trespassing, vandalism, fraudulent misrepresentation of jurisdiction, falsification of public documents, racketeering. Yeah, racketeering. Because when you start seizing land under forged documents, fining people out of fear, and funneling all the construction contracts to your kid, you've stepped out of petty suburban politics and into RICO territory. Karen didn't speak publicly. Not yet. But Brent, her son, did. Poor bastard went on local radio to clear the air. He claimed the contracts were above board, that he never pressured anyone, and that his mom was just trying to preserve community values. Then the host asked him if he'd ever been paid to demolish properties not legally under HOA jurisdiction. Brent hesitated. That pause, just a second too long. He muttered something about gray areas and disputed lot lines. The host went quiet, then cut to commercial. By the end of the week, 5 more homeowners came forward, mostly elderly, mostly alone, all with similar stories. Letters arrived declaring them HOA members. Fees were demanded. One man even had a storage shed removed while he was in the hospital. I drove over to meet him. Mr. Aldridge, 82, former Navy, now walking with a cane and a lifetime of distrust in his eyes. He showed me the pictures. His shed, gone. Just tire tracks in the snow. A bill from B&R for landscape correction, and a fake compliance form signed, again, by Garrett Holmes. "You see a man's house enough," Aldridge said. "You know when someone's trying to steal it out from under him." We included his affidavit in the expanding case file. By this point, the public pressure was suffocating the HOA. Several board members resigned. Their website went dark. Emails bounced. The community group forum reappeared only to issue a single message. Due to legal review, HOA operations are temporarily suspended. Temporarily my ass. On a Sunday night, I got a call from Ashlyn. "They're filing dissolution paperwork," she said, voice crackling through bad reception. "Karen hasn't been seen since the raid. Prosecutors pushing hard. We might see charges filed this week." "Criminal charges?" I asked. "Felony grade," she replied. "Multiple. The fraud alone is enough for 5 to 10 years. Add in the trespassing, the forged maps, the money trail to her son. They might stack it." Then she added, almost offhand, "By the way, the judge is authorizing property lien freezes on all HOA accounts and assets," meaning the HOA's bank accounts were locked, their cash flow gone. Any money Karen had siphoned into community beautification projects, administrative costs, or compliance operations was now being followed, audited, and in some cases, outright seized. That same week, Karen made one final move. She tried to have me served with a restraining order. Yes. After trespassing onto my property, after trying to have my banya destroyed, after faking documents and dragging my name through a counter lawsuit, she had the audacity to allege that I was dangerous and actively harassing her with social media campaigns. It was laughable. But Ashlyn didn't laugh. She filed a motion the same day, attaching a photo of Karen literally mid-swing with the pry bar. Captioned, "Respondent in question, under emotional duress, engaging in controlled demolition of opposing parties' private structure." The judge dismissed the restraining order within 24 hours. The silence from Karen after that was deafening. No interviews, no statements, not even a Facebook rant. Just a single rumor that she was taking time to rest in Arizona, probably somewhere far from process servers and angry neighbors. The court date was getting closer. Our case was strong. Their defense was vaporizing, and the community that once feared Karen was now turning on her with the speed of a pack of wolves that finally noticed the alpha's teeth were fake. And the best part, we weren't even done yet. Courtrooms aren't made for justice. They're made for procedure. Tight rows of pew-like benches, wood-paneled walls, and fluorescent lights that make everyone look guilty. But on that day, sitting across from Karen Bartholomew in Snohomish County Superior Court, it felt like justice might finally crack through the overhead buzz. She looked different. Gone was the perfect bob, the trench coat, the air of manicured control. Instead, she wore a charcoal gray suit that probably hadn't seen dry cleaning since the HOA Christmas party. Her eyes were heavy, her posture defensive. No entourage, no clipboard, no smug board members nodding behind her. Just her and her attorney, Terrence DeWald, who looked like he was being paid in expired coupons and shame. Ashlyn sat beside me, flipping through our exhibits with surgical confidence. Across the aisle were Doug, Loretta, Mr. Aldridge, and 2 other homeowners who had joined the suit as co-plaintiffs. The gallery was packed. Local reporters filled the back row. Someone even live-streamed it on TikTok. A week earlier, that would have seemed insane. Now it felt inevitable. Judge Lennox presided like she was waiting for someone to give her a reason to explode. And Karen gave her plenty. The proceedings opened with our side presenting the civil suit. Ashlyn moved through the evidence like a scalpel. Photographs of damage to my banya, GPS logs proving trespass, video footage of the incident, the forged map compared to county records, forensic handwriting analysis showing the fake inspector. Signature wasn't even close to Garrett Holmes' real one. Then came the financials. Ashlyn pulled up the HOA's ledgers from the leaked emails, showing tens of thousands paid to B&R Community Enhancements LLC. No competitive bidding, no votes, just invoices, approvals, and cleared checks, many signed directly by Karen. Brent didn't show up to testify. Subpoenaed, yes. But he filed a Fifth Amendment plea and went off-grid the same day local press ran a headline calling him the demolition prince of Silver Birch Hills. Then Ashlyn dropped the bombshell, a previously undisclosed audio recording from a resigned board member. In the clip, Karen is clearly heard saying, "If we don't get those outer lots under control, the whole neighborhood starts slipping. It's not theft, it's preemptive correction. Most of those people don't even know what they signed. And the ones who do, we'll outlast them." It played over the courtroom speakers like a gunshot. Karen froze. Her attorney looked like someone just slipped arsenic into his kombucha. Judge Lennox stopped proceedings, requested the original file, and then, stone-faced, called a recess. During the break, Karen tried to leave the courtroom but was met at the door by 2 county deputies. She wasn't arrested yet. But the optics were clear. Her world was shrinking. Fast. When the session resumed, the prosecution, yes, prosecution, stood up. A representative from the district attorney's office had entered the room during recess. Word had come down. Based on the evidence presented in our civil hearing, the county would now pursue criminal charges against Karen Bartholomew: fraud, forgery, conspiracy, attempted unlawful seizure of property. The judge formally paused our civil suit pending the outcome of the criminal case, but she made one thing clear. The court has seen more than enough to refer this matter to the grand jury. Karen sat in silence. Her face was slack, drained, like someone had pulled the batteries from her spine. She didn't even flinch when the judge announced a motion to freeze all her personal assets related to the HOA. Pending investigation. No HOA credit cards. No reimbursements, no travel funds, no nothing. And the kicker, Ashlyn requested and received a protective injunction around my property, ensuring that neither Karen nor any representative of the now-defunct HOA could come within 200 feet of my home. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I didn't speak. Let Ashlyn do that. She was better with words anyway. She spoke calmly, clearly about property rights, the abuse of authority, the quiet manipulations that go unnoticed in affluent neighborhoods, about how power, unchecked, corrodes. Behind her, Loretta waved a small hand-painted sign that said, "I don't pay HOA dues to a criminal." The crowd laughed. We needed that. That night, I sat in the banya, finally repaired, cedar strong, heat rolling like breath from the earth. Snow outside, stars above. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. Not victory, not yet, but peace. Karen would face trial. The HOA was finished. The county had its teeth in the corruption that rotted just beneath the picket fences. And I was just a guy in a towel, surrounded by steam, knowing the worst was almost over. Almost. The courthouse smelled like old paper and disinfectant the morning of the sentencing. No cameras were allowed this time. Just the low murmur of reporters, county clerks, and an exhausted courtroom waiting for one woman to finally run out of lies. Karen Bartholomew sat alone at the defense table. Brent never showed up. Her lawyer looked like he hadn't slept in a week. And Karen, she looked ordinary. No more power stance, no righteous indignation, no threats about aesthetics or community preservation. Just a pale, aging woman staring at the floor, gripping the arms of her chair like she might fall through it. The trial hadn't even taken long. 3 weeks of damning evidence, multiple witnesses, digital forensics, county employees testifying about fake filings, and one glorious forensic accountant who connected nearly $200,000 in misused funds to Karen-approved improvement contracts, 80% of which funneled to her son's company. The grand jury returned indictments on all major charges. The jury found her guilty, and now Judge Lennox was about to hand down the sentence. Karen stood when ordered. Her lawyer mumbled something about her age, her intentions to preserve the character of the neighborhood, and her emotional stress from leadership burden. The courtroom didn't even pretend to care. Judge Lennox didn't either. She read through the counts. Criminal trespass, felony vandalism, fraud, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud, forgery of official documents, unlawful use of HOA authority for personal gain, attempted coercion of multiple property owners. Then she said it, 17 years, 10 without the possibility of parole. Karen didn't speak, didn't cry. She just blinked, once, and sat down too fast, like her knees gave out. They cuffed her in front of everyone, and I don't mean metaphorically. A deputy stepped forward and fastened real steel cuffs around the wrists of the woman who once screamed about illegal wood paneling and fence symmetry as if she were defending a sacred order. People clapped, not loudly, but just enough to be heard. Judge Lennox banged the gavel and warned the room. Outside, the press exploded. Not just local. Seattle outlets were there. Even a few national blogs had picked up the story. HOA tyrant sentenced in property theft conspiracy became the headline on half the feeds I saw that day. And the HOA, dead, dissolved by court order. Its accounts frozen, assets seized, and remaining funds redistributed, first as restitution to homeowners, then to the county for investigation costs. The neighborhood would revert to standard county code enforcement. The properties marked as absorbed legally returned to their rightful designations. Doug Prescott got his $5,000 back, plus interest. Loretta had her new pergola built, pro bono by volunteers. Mr. Aldridge's shed, replaced by a local veterans group. And me? I got my banya back. Not just rebuilt, reinforced. The damage was sanded out, new cedar shipped in from Oregon, and the roof retreated with heat-sealed polymer. I even upgraded the stove to a high-end finish model that hissed like a dragon when you poured water on the stones. But the best part? The plaque. I had it custom-made, bronze, heavy, bolted right onto the outer wall beside the door. Aesthetic Freedom Zone. Not a member of your HOA. Trespassing is a felony. Steam responsibly. Beneath it, a second plaque, smaller, just a framed, waterproof printed photo. Karen Bartholomew, in her orange jumpsuit. Head bowed, glasses cracked, standing at her final hearing like the suburban warlord she used to be, reduced to a docket number and a booking ID. People still talk about it. Not the sauna, the war. The HOA world had cracked open. Other counties started reviewing how their own associations operated. One lawmaker even proposed a bill requiring external audits of every HOA over a certain size. They called it Karen's Law. I nearly choked laughing. As for me, I kept the land, kept the view, kept the peace, or what passes for it in a place where fences are both literal and psychological. Some days I still wake up tense, half expecting a letter, a knock, or another drone. But mostly, I wake up grateful. Grateful for steam, silence, and the sound of my dog snoring by the porch. And for the reminder, carved into bronze, backed by fire, and paid for in full. No one decides what peace looks like on my land but me.